Welcome, everyone who's not here for the usual content. I'm here to review the first episode of House of the Dragon. And yeah, figured that I should make a review on this series because it's currently the one I'm following the most. It's also associated with AEW somehow. I don't know how they managed to get that promotion, but didn't really help the ratings. But yeah, House of the Dragon is like the biggest show right now, I think. So yeah, first of all, I haven't read the book that this is based on, which is Fire and Blood. I did download the audiobook, but I haven't reached that part yet. But from what I know, House of the Dragon is just like an encyclopedia. It doesn't really go this deep as the show is doing. And there's also a lot of hearsay taken into account into Fire and Blood. Because it's written from a perspective of a maester. And the show is actually showing us what legit happened. So yeah, I expect multiple seasons of this. I think maybe 3 or 4 as is rumored. But it would be nice to have other time periods as well. Why not start off with Aegon's conquest and then work from there? It's 20 years worth of content, but I would have preferred if per monarch, the life of a monarch or a generation in age lasted one season, and we'll get another one after until right before the start of the main show. I really hate waiting for seasons for a year in order to get the continuation of a story. It also wouldn't take a long ass time, and me being 50 when we get to Aries, because media changes, taste changes. Game of Thrones might not be as popular when we finally get to closer to the main show. So I think it would have been more effective if we just got this out of the way. Because this show could go downhill. It's gonna gradually lose fans the more that happens. Or tastes could just change. There might be genre fatigue, and the main show took a lot of time in order to build up and gain a mainstream following. Because now I think hardcore fans love this show. The marks love this show. But yeah, the advantage I see with a 3 to 4 season run is that it will snowball and gain the mainstream following, but that's not guaranteed. And I spoiled myself on the ending of this time period. And yeah, I don't know if it's gonna please a lot of fans. So yeah, for episode 1, we start with a prologue where we have King Jaehaerys' great council held in Harrenhal, where he will select his heir. He lost his 2 oldest boys, so he has to pick between his grandson Viserys, who eventually wins the title, and then his only surviving daughter, Princess Rhaenys. So yeah, this scene really accomplishes a lot. First of all, it sets this recurring thing, this sort of it carries over to the main show. This sort of sexism within Westeros. Obviously it's there, it's a medieval society. It's not how things are done, so they selected the dude. But it's no guarantee, whoever you pick. Just a character that appears later. Another thing that I like about this is that it's set in Harrenhal, the biggest castle in all of the 7 kingdoms. They didn't even hold it in the Red Keep because the Red Keep is new. Consideration is placed for the Lords of the North. It's being held in the Riverlands. So yeah, and travel in the south, I presume, is a lot easier. There are places in the north such as Moat Cailin, as well as all the snow. It's just a pain. Plus, Harrenhal can house a bigger crowd. The castle is described to be unreasonably big. King's Landing also wasn't the best place to live yet. It started out as a military camp by Aegon, but then it was completed by Maegor, who Great Wall of China the builders. And basically Harrenhal is just a castle. It's a castle town, unlike King's Landing, which is a metropolis. It probably smells like shit. Gold cloaks weren't founded yet. And yeah, it's a kind of a dangerous place for rich people to be in. So yeah. And I think it also reminds people about the power of the Targaryens, how Balerion the Black Dread, who's dead right now, fucking roasted everyone in this castle back in the day. And it's just nice to see Harrenhal. Like, it's nice to see it less decayed, less shit. It looks like events are actually being held here. It looks like a desirable place for lords to be in before they were cursed, and whoever like kept Harrenhal like kept dying, like had his whole family line dying. And I like the acting, even though like very subtle, by the actor who plays Jaehaerys. So Jaehaerys is this like really successful king who rules for 60 years. He's a hard worker. He like literally trained to be a fighter because his father was known to be like a pussy, basically. But he was always intelligent, like from the start. He trained so hard that his Kingsguard would like sort of like make fun of him for losing all the time. I mean, not just his Kingsguard. He had like fighters train him. They made jokes like, I killed the king again, killed the king, something like that. Long live the king whenever Jaehaerys like stepped back up again. This dude is like really stand up, not free from mistakes and like his own flaws. But basically he's the best king in all of Westerosi history. Like, his rule was utopian and would never be replicated again. This is the Targaryens at its height, but it's only like 2 generations since the foundation of the civilization. First King Aegon, second Aenys, third Maegor, who ruled for like 6 years, and then we have Jaehaerys, who like rules for 60 years, outlives his sons, and has to make this like shitty choice. And you could see on the guy's face, like it's even said by the narrator that he knows trouble is coming. It doesn't happen right away, but it does eventually happen. So yeah, really good first scene that sets up a lot of things. It's done really well. It's presented like this like entire legendary place like Harrenhal in like the scale that everything should have been. Like the only thing missing were like the people in the balconies. Like if you just had like a little more like people here, this would have been perfect. But you know, limitations and stuff, the budget, but it's still a 10 out of 10 scene. After this, we get like this orientation sort of crawl, like opening crawl in order to orient the viewer. It says the time relative to the main show, which is unpopular due to people hating on the main show, which I'm also part of that crowd. But I think it's necessary. It's necessary to set people's expectations, orient them on what's happening in order to like get more people into the show. And I like how there's no opening yet. Let's just not have an opening anymore. Let's have like the full hour of the show be just pure show. So after this, we get like this scene where Princess Rhaenyra is riding on Syrax. I wonder where Sector is. But yeah, she's riding on Syrax. CGI of the dragon looks good. We get a shot of King's Landing, and then a shot of the dragon pit, where we have these like Valyrian dragon handlers. Like not really Valyrian, but they're trained in the tongue. They can communicate with the dragons, and the dragons cooperate. I like that Valyrian is still prominent here. It's only been a couple of generations since they left the homeland, and they still have dragons to control, so nice touch. And I love how like everything looks so like much better than it does in the main show. It's like this Tolkien thing where he believes the past is much better than the present, and that everything devolves as time passes by. Kingsguard armor is the same, but like we have this like awesome looking carriage. And then we are introduced to Alicent Hightower, a future like big time player of this series, of like the whole story as a whole. And then we get a shot of King's Landing, of the set for it, and like the entryway to the Red Keep. And yeah, everything checks out. The city might look better than was described in the book, but we are fresh off of King Jaehaerys' reign. So yeah, he did really good, full coffers for the government. And of course, King's Landing looks better than it does in the main show. And then we get shots of Alicent and Rhaenyra walking inside the castle, but I'm not really like very good in orientations of like buildings. I sometimes get lost, but like so far it does like compute or like how the castle is structured in some parts, but for others I don't know. And so Rhaenyra is this like sort of Arya Starkish, tomboyish sort of like woman who doesn't like the status quo. She doesn't want to be just a womb for like men to impregnate, for men to use in order to have heirs, but that's how her mother views things. Her mother is an Arryn, but she's half Targaryen, so she has like silver hair. Again, this builds up to the finale that we're gonna get later. And then we get change scene of Viserys meeting with the small council. We have Lord Corlys Velaryon, who is represented as Black in the show, explaining this serious threat in Essos. And then the council, including the king, just like ignore him. They say they're considering his request, but like we all know, Viserys' mind is with his wife, his like possible heir, and like the celebrations that he's gonna hold because of it. Like this triarchy that Lord Corlys is talking about, like it's gonna bite them in the ass. Like when they become strong enough, they're gonna be so difficult to deal with. And like by that time, they're gonna rule the seas. Like the Targaryens won't stand a chance. The Seven Kingdoms won't stand a chance, like navy-wise. So why not just cut off the head of the snake right now? But yeah, the Hand of the King, Lord Otto Hightower, is like redirecting the conversation, sucking up to the king, and talking about what the king like cares for more. Very short-sighted, but I think he's doing this on purpose. He's politicking his way into the king's heart. Actually, most of the lords on this table right now are just like fucking around, while like Lord Corlys here is like denying himself wine. He's like having a stank face on, and again, it sets up his character as this dutiful, no-nonsense character. It sets up his personality as being this like what we think of as like a good guy, but it also gives him reason to despise the king. One, because his wife just got like shafted by her father for the crown. The king is just like ignoring his very valid request or very valid point that he's bringing up. Then I've read this story in The World of Ice and Fire. I've done a lot of reading since the last recording, and it sets up a quest by Lord Corlys and another dude. I'm actually pretty excited about this part. Like, if we get this before season end, like if the season ends with that scene, with that character, I will be a happy dude. So yeah, next scene we have Rhaenyra walking into the throne room where her uncle, the commander of the City Watch, the founder of the Gold Cloaks, Daemon Targaryen, is like seated on an iron throne that is incredibly book accurate, with all of the swords in the background. I even think this seat should be bigger, but they did a masterful job replicating George's books. But then again, I really love how they're talking in Valyrian. And then we get hints that Daemon kind of has feelings for his niece, as well as the other way around. Targaryens practice incest, and sexual tension is just like all over this scene right here. So at this point, all of the acting has been spot on so far. And then we get some more setting up of Rhaenyra's character. She doesn't really care for books. She doesn't care for the usual things that women in this world care about. She's like more of a tomboyish character in Arya Stark. And all she wants is to fly on her dragon, just like let her dad have this like son in order to like get her away from succession. She doesn't want to succeed, and she just wants to hang out with her friend Alicent. And boy, the tragedy that's gonna happen right there. I can't wait. And then we get this small scene where King Viserys is like being rejected by the throne. There's this thing where these like poor rulers, including Aerys the Second, as well as like Maegor the Cruel, like when they sit on the Iron Throne, they're cut, and this is like the throne rejecting them, that they're a bad ruler, that they're weak. So Viserys has this cut on his back that is unhealing. The first time I watched this, I thought this was gonna be the setup for his death, but apparently after like I read the encyclopedias, he's gonna live for a long time. So no need to worry about Viserys right now. And then we have a setup for his character where he talks to his wife. It shows his like obsession, just like he's like obsessed with having a male heir. It also shows that he loves his wife, but it sets up the decision that he makes further on in the show when Queen Aemma like begs him. This is gonna be the last impregnation, the last gravida. Like currently she's gravida 7, para 6, 1401. She's lost so many children and she wants out. But Viserys, the acting here is really good. He doesn't say no. He just doesn't say anything. He doesn't promise anything. Just cut directly into the next scene where Prince Daemon is with the newly formed Gold Cloaks, and this is their first night out. I just love this scene right here. Acting by Matt Smith is not only like just like spot on, but I think this is like super badass, and it actually convinced me to like side with him in what he's about to do. And what he does is he like indiscriminately, I think, accuses people of crimes that they maybe didn't commit and cuts off limbs according to the crime that they're accused of. So you can use your imagination on that. It's more of a scare tactic than anything. I would have been okay with just like beating the people up, but like having them like remove body parts permanently off of people, like just in just in order to like have them be scared, is kind of counterproductive and just like plain bloodthirsty. Dude is pretty much just here to have fun. He even smiles as he beheads someone. Of course, this is like terrible, but just the charisma on Daemon and the way they're setting him up as the bad guy of the show, and his main political rival, Sir Otto Hightower, or like Lord Otto Hightower, as this honorable good guy, Ned Stark sort of guy. But we soon find out that it's not the opposite. Both of them are like, they end up being assholes, but Daemon is our asshole. Like, in Viserys' point of view, I believe that Daemon is like an our asshole sort of guy, and like he will never betray his brother. So then we get the scene where Daemon is finally on the table and like overhears his brother and Sir Otto Hightower just like bad mouthing him. I like that Daemon is backing up his actions with like the tournament that's upcoming, where they're gonna invite all of the lords of the land in order to like celebrate, as well as watch him like name an heir, the son that he's expecting. But yeah, Daemon says it's just to like make the city safe. Lord Corlys supports him, even though Corlys looks like a good guy. Like just the depth on his character, that no one is one-dimensional, that even this honorable, like dutiful dude like Lord Corlys would support just like a wanton, just like indiscriminate killing of people. That even though you're a good noble, you still see the people as less. Like, real-life rulers have tried this before. Like in the Philippines, one of our leaders, the most recent one, does this. Like, not out in the open, but it's rumored. So I can see where he's coming from. And people in this day and age, in like the medieval times, were not very reasonable. Like, words can't get through people, action can. But this looks like it's too much. But yeah, I like the line by Viserys where he says, I hope you won't maim half my city or something. And then we have this argument with Otto Hightower and Daemon. Otto is trying to basically like get Daemon out of the capital, rags him about his wife that he ignores, but Daemon just doesn't give a shit. Like, Otto Hightower like gets off his seat, Daemon like mentions his dead wife, and they almost come to blows. But honestly, what chance does Otto Hightower have, really? And then Viserys gives him a warning, a slap on the wrist, and then sends him on his merry way. So yeah, Daemon and the Hightowers will forever be enemies. And Daemon is like a petty guy. Like, he proves it later in the tournament scene. But here we're shown the sort of relationship that Viserys and Daemon have. They both care for each other, and one is willing to give the other the benefit of the doubt more than someone should. And we just have like this like seemingly honorable dude. Doesn't look like he's gonna be the bad guy at the start. Like, compared to Daemon just maiming people on the street, like just accusing anyone of stuff willy-nilly and then cutting off their limbs. This guy seems like he's a good guy, that he's like level-headed, but I like the sort of double turn that we get by the end. So after this is the most gratuitous sex scene that we'll get in the entire episode. It's Daemon going to town on Mysaria, and I'm gonna have to censor a lot of this because, you know, my channel might get taken down. But yeah, this short scene here is not only for the TNA, but it also shows us what Daemon feels behind the scenes, that he actually gives a shit of like what people think about him, to the point that it affects his sex life. It also introduces us to Mysaria, who we really don't get to see do her magic yet, because she does become Master of Whispers, his personal Master of Whispers. And then we get the first tournament scene. Everything's all glorious. Everyone's dressed a lot better than the main show. Like, the whole place where the tournament is held looks a lot grander. And it's probably just because of the budget. But we could also put this on like the whole token thing, where everything like degrades as time passes. Like, the kingdom just got off its like greatest golden age period. Jaehaerys was the best ruler they've ever had. Of course, everything looks better. While in the main show, it's just like a shitty tent setup attended by like not much people. They were just fresh off of a rebellion, and as Littlefinger said in the main show, they had no money. Like, the crown had so many debts, and it explains why the tournament in a later era looked worse than this era. And as for the tournament scene itself, it looks a lot better. It's like they have a movie budget for this. It's almost as good as Knight's Tale, but come on, Knight's Tale is the best. Okay, never mind. This looks better than Knight's Tale. And then we get a reminder of who Princess Rhaenys is, the queen who never was. It shows that she's not the most respected person in the entire kingdom. I bet she has to take this a lot, but like behind those eyes, she's like vengeful. She will take revenge if she can, or if someone offends her, like proportionally. And there's this part also where like Otto Hightower whispers to the king, like, just give him the word and then we'll take care of Baratheon. But Viserys, being level-headed and not like Maegor, and basically like not be one of those insane Targaryens, just gives it a pass. And then we're introduced to one of the major players later on, the Kingmaker Criston Cole. They make him look strong, they push him a bit as he defeats two Baratheons. They build him up for Prince Daemon in the finals. And then we have this shot that finally orients us to the city. Yeah, the dragon pit is right beside the tourney field, which is like ways away from the Red Keep. So it's like an L in order to get from the Red Keep to the dragon pit. And then the best part of this whole first part of the tournament is where Prince Daemon, without the face mask, leaving his face completely exposed, or like splinters, or like maybe like just like the whole lance to like just go through his head, wears this like open helmet that could be worn in battle. Romans wear open helmets, but in a joust, that's so fucking dangerous, and might just be to show that he's like a badass, or they just want to show Matt Smith's face. And yeah, I love the scene where he just picks Otto Hightower's son in order to like piss off his dad, to like get back at the hand of the king. Like, I love the costuming here. Of course, he had to pick the guy with a tower on his helmet, so I don't recognize all of the heraldry, but I see House Tully, I see House Lannister, I see Tyrells, and I see the flayed man of the Dreadfort, House Bolton as well. And then for the actual jousting, I don't like that they made Prince Daemon lose a tilt right away. They made him look weak. I think he should have just, like, one hit, destroyed the Hightower boy. Maybe even killed him. But he hits his horse. Otto's son falls on his face. Like, his helmet gets removed. And then he ends up with, like, I think a deformed face, a bloody face. But yeah, so much for House Hightower. And then just to like twist the knife, he asks for Lady Alicent's favor after he just kicked her brother's ass and probably like deformed him for life. And so after this, we get the second part of the tournament where the knights start killing each other. We also get like juxtaposed to this birthing scene of Queen Emma. And it's been talked about to death how the birthing scene is the battlefield of the women while the tournament is the battlefield of the men, but I'm not gonna get more into that. So for the birthing scene, it was fucking uncomfortable. As someone who studies CSs a lot, like it's the management to a lot of things these days, like breach presentation, just like in this case right here. There's like a whole process of like delivering the baby. And if that doesn't work, CS. Transverse lie, CS. Placenta previa, CS. Abruptio placenta, maybe. Yeah, the only difference with like this scene right here and how it's being done now is that you can close it up now. And the maesters aren't even wearing gloves, so they don't even care if there's like an infection. They're like 100% expecting her to die. This is a death sentence. And she's not even dying. So yeah, this scene is just wrong in so many levels. It's kind of shocking how this was like actually done in the past. Because like not only in the show, but in real life, like cesarean sections were only done when the mother was sure to die. That's based on records. We don't know if like they were actually forced to undergo this. And it was also the choice of the husband, which is like takes away like the agency from Queen Emma to live because she didn't want it. Like I've heard other reviewers talk about this. Like for example, like Shadiversity like admires this scene because it's like she's giving her life for the future of the kingdom. But I don't think that's what this scene is trying to convey. Like Queen Emma clearly wants to live. This doesn't happen in the book. It happens like a generation before with like King Jaehaerys' mother as she's giving birth to Rhaegar Baratheon's child. And she was like 40 plus, 46 or something. They considered it a miracle. Then even though like Rhaegar has a boy already, has like many children, he orders the death of his wife, basically. And like the princess of Dragonstone at the time, who has like a fully grown dragon, threatens Rhaegar Baratheon of like death, but he just like waves her away because she's a woman. It really makes one think about this impossible choice and how basically saving the mother is the right choice. Since there's already investment there, you've spent your life with this woman for like 30 or like multiple years, double-digit years, and the baby's just coming out like just now, probably like without a mother. So yeah, Viserys dick move right here. And he kind of got what he fucking deserved after when his like newborn son, Balon, doesn't make it. So yeah, this scene is really effective, really disturbing. And Queen Emma is now like Gravita 7, Para 7, 2401. And so yeah, happening concurrently to this is the tournament scene, the second half. It's when things start to take a bloody turn because they don't really do this in like real life, like back in the day. But here the knights start killing each other. Like historically, tournament participants just used like blunted weapons, blunted swords, blunted axes. I mean, death still happened, but like not as gratuitous as this. Like you still have real wars to face and tournaments aren't the end all be all. The reward here like pales in comparison to like actually taking over some place and being given a castle. So yeah, for me this is like a massive waste of life, and this isn't representative of like historical tournaments. I mean, there are like children of like major lords in the tournament. There's a Tyrell, there's a Tully, and there's a Lannister. And we like see a Lannister get like destroyed with the shield. Like the sound's there. He's dead. And yeah, even in the books, it was mentioned that they use blunted weapons in tournaments. Like Jaehaerys had a tournament and the weapons were blunted. And this is still basically in the same like era. And even in the main show, like killing was discouraged in tournaments because it's a waste of life. Like their lives could be given for like something more, like actual war. So this doesn't follow the book at all. But how I would explain this away is that only 3 generations of like kings have passed like before this time. We've had Aegon the Conqueror, who reigned for like 36 years. King Aenys, who reigned for 5 years. And then King Maegor, who reigned for like 6 years. And then Jaehaerys, 50 years. So we've only had like 100 years of Targaryen rule. we're also like 60 years past like this huge rebellion by the Faith Militant and like half of Seven Kingdoms. 60 years away from like the rule of King Maegor, who probably had deaths in tournaments. I can see him adding this rule in order to like cull the nobility while making them want to do it. I mean, it could be a punishment. We just had like King Jaehaerys, who had like a peaceful reign for like 55 years, plus 9 years of King Viserys' reign. So it still doesn't make sense if you think about it. Shit, so my rationale is just like losing ground so fast. But I think it's because like the Targaryens rule the Seven Kingdoms. They have dragons. There's basically no one else to fight in proximity unless you take a boat, you go to Essos. Wink wink spoilers. Or if you go south to Dorne, but Dorne wants peace. So there's not really like a war that's expected. Everyone thinks everything's gonna be peaceful for like 100 more years, which is impossible. So why not have like the children of lords just kill each other, basically? What do you have to lose? Young men sate their bloodlust while culling each other. It's a win-win for the Targaryens. You know, unless the Targaryen that's participating dies. But yeah, that doesn't happen. Like, I'm sure everyone in this tournament knows not to fuck with Prince Daemon. But if we forget about that, if we forget about, like, the inaccuracy, and, like, just the sheer stupidity of knights being allowed to kill each other in tournaments, the scene was done very well. Just the reactions by everyone, shocked as hell, including the Valyrian kids, especially Lady Alicent, who's, like, just chipping away at her nails, like, bleeding red. And this squire in the background who just pukes himself. And I also love how, like, every move here registers. I love how the knights sell their injuries. Like, just look at this one right here. Axe driven to his head, like, pulls away the top of his skull, and then he isn't moving. He doesn't move until he's pulled off. This is some better selling than most of the wrestling we see today. Like, I love it how everything registers, unlike these flippy guys in AEW right now. And I also like the selling of this guy here, who gets hit in the head with a mace, and then his head just explodes. It fucking explodes. And then he just lies there on the floor, missing half of his head. Like, do you see any wrestlers sell like this? Having their heads explode and then them just lying there and not no-selling anything? No, you don't. This is why people do not take pro wrestling seriously, because they don't sell like this. But don't think you can get away with the good selling. I don't like how the rules aren't followed. Right after someone loses a jousting fight, they're allowed just to pull someone off their horse. Like, historically, there is, like, a separate tournament for this. There's the jousting and there's the melee. So yeah, great selling, but not perfect. Shit, I just compared House of the Dragon to, like, pro wrestling. Well, that is the main content of the channel, so. And then we have the final round with Prince Daemon against Lord Criston Cole. Like, two future rivals facing off right here. And I love how they just portray Prince Daemon like a dick. He doesn't even respect his squires. He just knocks them down. While Criston Cole, who I think is the bad guy later on, like, he's a lot more heelish than Daemon is. Let's just say. He's portrayed as a good guy here. And then I love how, like, Daemon is knocked off his horse and then just can't bring himself up, and he's, like, on the rails, and then he falls on his ass. And then we have the fight. We have the melee, which is weird, because what's the point of the joust if you just you know what? Fuck it. So, Sir Criston Cole has, like, a Morning Star, and Prince Daemon has Dark Sister. So when I first watched this, I didn't think it was Dark Sister. So I was like, of course the guy with the Morning Star will win, because Criston Cole doesn't have to dodge. Daemon is carrying just a sword, but he's basically carrying the equivalent of a mace, but moves faster because it's a sword. It's Valyrian steel, it cuts through armor. And God, just how Criston Cole wins this match. He finesses the Valyrian steel sword off of Prince Daemon. Then Prince Daemon looks like he's about to win. Manages to beat Criston Cole with a shield. And Prince Daemon celebrates early, and this costs him the match. And of course, he's forced to yield. Way to make Prince Daemon look weak and dumb at the same time. But still great actor. So yeah, after this, Princess Rhaenyra is smitten with Sir Criston Cole, gives him her favor, and there's more to come with these two, so hang on to your seats. And then, like, right before we move on to the next scene, we see the Grand Maester react like a bit weirdly to the baby, and then we find out that the baby died. Like, he's right there with Princess Emma, so everything that Viserys tried to do was for naught. They're both burned by Rhaenyra's dragon, who's Syrax, and she does the whole Dracarys thing, but a lot less cringy. And then we get to this small council scene where they decide, or like just discuss, the succession. It's basically Lord Corlys Velaryon and the king who support Daemon, and the rest of the small council don't. And then they start planting shit in his head while Daemon is like behind divider, listening to everything. They sort of pit Daemon against Rhaenyra, but spoiler alert, the final like opponents will be more interesting than this. Like, it gets a lot more complicated. And you know, I disagree with all this like Prince Daemon slander because they keep comparing him to Maegor the Cruel, and Maegor was the exact king they needed at the time. Like, if it wasn't for him, Westeros would be ruled by the Septons. Targaryens would have been extinct. Or the dragons would have just burnt everything. It would have been a shittier situation without King Maegor. So yeah, you truly don't know how someone is gonna rule until they start ruling. But then the scene we get after with Lord Otto Hightower basically convincing his daughter to like comfort the king. He's pimping out his own daughter to like seduce the king to be like his future queen. This is when this guy's true colors appear. He is a Tywin / Littlefinger. And so Alicent, being the obedient daughter, does her duty and then tries to seduce the king as he's playing with his train sets or his like model buildings. King has a hobby and it's pretty constructive. But we don't get like Alicent succeeding right away. It's gonna take some time for that. But yeah, before I move on to the next scene, just the acting of Paddy Considine is so good. He's like overtaken Daemon as the best actor in the show so far. Like how he reacts to the death of his wife and child, how he tries to like bury himself in his hobby, as well as how he reacts to Alicent here. Like the planting of future seeds is really good. And you really don't expect it from someone who is like usually a comedian in his roles, like in Hot Fuzz or The World's End. And then the next scene is some more TNA. Prince Daemon entertaining the City Watch, and the dude just can't keep his mouth shut. He says in a public setting, and this whole thing is actually kind of a celebration, but he says he basically buries the dead Prince Balon, calls him heir for the day. Then of course, this gets back to Lord Otto Hightower. He tells it to the king, and then the king gets pissed and summons Prince Daemon to his throne room as he's like right there holding Blackfire. But yeah, back to the previous scene. I would have preferred if like Matt Smith actually said heir of the day, but it does help like setting up the next scene where we think it's just like Otto Hightower's BS, but then like right after we soon find out that he actually said it. And then we get the best part of the entire episode, and it's the confrontation between King Viserys and Prince Daemon. The best promo segment of this entire episode. All the emotion is right here. Then I love how just Prince Daemon goes for the jugular right away. He calls Viserys weak, and he gives him the truth right away. And then I think Viserys impulsively exiles his brother, and he immediately gets cut on the Iron Throne like right away. It's the way of the Iron Throne telling him that you just fucked up. You're condemning the Seven Kingdoms to its greatest war yet. Dragon against dragon, Targaryen against Targaryen. The deaths of like hundreds of thousands of people. Let's just put it that way. And so after this, we get the scene where Viserys unofficially makes Rhaenyra his heir. It's him telling him that you're the heir. I'm sorry that I was obsessing for like a son. You're the heir. Can't control the dragons. And then we shift to the official announcement of like Rhaenys being the heir, with all of the lords of the kingdom, including the lords paramount, swearing to her, giving their oaths. We also get a Stark who like I don't care about. He's not the Stark that's gonna matter later. Just something for the fans, for like the casual fans. And then we get the worst part of the episode. They like verbally say prophecy and what's gonna happen in the future, and it just reminds everyone of the shit show that's gonna be the last season of Game of Thrones. But if we forget about like the whole thing with that, it is a nice thing to add though. I like that there's something more in Aegon's conquest, and not just like to conquer everything. So we get a couple of more shots, we get a shot of Rhaenyra, and then end of episode. So yeah, overall, I fucking love this episode. This is how you revive the interest for Game of Thrones. I wish they would just like stop mentioning the future. Acting was great all throughout. Paddy Considine, Matt Smith, and Millie Alcock are the best actors of the show so far. And the rest weren't given enough time to like shine yet. So I'm gonna evaluate them in future episodes. And I wonder when the change from Millie Alcock to Emma D'Arcy will happen. Because it's bound to happen. Like, everyone here gets older, and there are gonna be like a lot of actress and actor changes. For Matt Smith, he's not going anywhere. So yeah, this is a 9 out of 10 episode for me. 10 out of 10 if it wasn't for the mentioning of like the future, as well as the wrong perceptions that it'll give people about medieval society, i.e. the tournament where knights were allowed to kill each other. So yeah, great episode. Looking forward for tomorrow's episode 2. And so yeah, like, comment, and subscribe for engagement. Share if you don't know me. Hit that bell notification for future videos. And please, watch my shit.